Good evening. Mayor Schwarzler is out of town this evening, so I will at 6:30 on September 9th call us to order.
Councilor Ford,
Here.
Councilor Morton,
Here.
Councilor Marvelous,
Here.
Councilor Wagner,
Here.
Councilor Groden, present, and Councilor Source is absent, excused as well.
Okay. So this evening, I think it appears I get to turn it over to our Assistant City Manager, Sean.
Yep, great.
Take it away.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this to y'all. So I mentioned this back when we were talking about the realtor of record, that we'd be talking about this. This is the revenue properties from the Independence Landing development. So as you recall, when the former Valley Concrete site was redeveloped, the city funded the infrastructure that went in there, split it into 8 lots. 4 of those lots ended up as the Independence Landing Apartments and Hotel. 1 of those lots ended up as Osprey Point, the mixed-use building on the corner there of Osprey Lane and C Street. And then we hung on to the remaining 3 lots. And the idea there was essentially that there was a lot of development that was going to be happening. We might as well kind of wait and see, sorry, I'll slide over a little bit here so you can actually see you. We might as well, let's wait and let those developments get built, get occupied, get stabilized, and then essentially see what we want to do with those 3 properties. No need to flood the market, unnecessarily. It's been several years since those developments have been finished. They're fully occupied, they're stabilized. Now seems like an opportune time to revisit those properties. You'll see I've got a couple of images here just to identify where those properties are. One's kind of a zoomed out, one's a little more zoomed in to show you where, kind of more what's around them. We're looking at basically 3 lots, a total of about 1.5 acres. And all the services and utilities are there, zoning is ready, they're basically as development ready as they could be. And so now, given the desire with the city to sell some properties, to make some money, we're looking at what we can do with those properties within the urban renewal district to facilitate that as well. And I want to kind of just talk to you about how we're looking at this, how we're approaching it, and get you all's feedback on it. Basically, there's 2 options for disposing of these properties. First would be, and we've hired a realtor of record. They've brought a team. They can help us with listing. They can help us with development solicitations, kind of whatever we need. So first choice or first option would be we essentially just list the properties. We pick a price, we list them, and we sell them for as much as we can get through just a basic property listing. That would be I'd say the quickest way to do it. The issue with that being that we essentially would give up control of what happens there. We would just be saying, here, give us the money, you get to do whatever you want with it. No say beyond the existing zoning that's on the property. And then more importantly, how soon it may or may not get developed. Somebody might just buy it and then hang on to it for a number of years as a future opportunity. The other possibility is to do some variation of a development solicitation, and that's something that we've done on several properties in the past. It can be kind of, I'd say, a fairly significant thing or a not very significant thing. But essentially, instead of a listing, what we'd be doing is advertising the properties for sale. And then we, with that advertisement, we'd be sort of talking about our vision for the community, for the downtown, for the properties, any conditions we want to put on it, on the development of those properties. And then we'd be asking the developers to give us proposals back saying, here's what I would want to do with this property. Here's my vision for it. Here's how it meets your vision. And here's how it's going to benefit the city. Conditions we can place on it is the price that we, the minimum price that we would accept. And so if a developer wants to say, hey, I would want to do this and I would pay more, or, they can essentially propose whatever within those, those boundaries that we create. The benefit of this approach is it gives the developers time to essentially, potentially work with neighbors, look at ways that they can use the urban renewal district properties to create potentially more significant development. You'll see on the closer in map here, 2 of the lots, the southern 2 lots they've got land adjacent to them, and kind of the initial hope, or I'd say, I think the hope has always kind of been that those properties would at some point be packaged with their neighboring properties to enable some type of a larger development that better fits, that sort of the walkable mixed use downtown that that's being created down there. And so I think that would kind of be the thrust of the development solicitations, to try to say, look, we've got this property that we can do, that we can offer for sale. There's potential with neighboring land if you can work something out. Here's the types of things that we would like to see. If we can create more upper floor residential, ground floor commercial, bringing more people living into the downtown. It's a, additional customer base for downtown businesses, potentially additional commercial space. These are all things that are continue the development of the downtown. The other thing that I think has value with this approach is any type of a sale would come with a development agreement. And so we, rather than just saying, okay, you gave us money, you get the property, away you go, to do whatever you want. We would say, okay, you've given us a proposal, you want to do X, Y, and Z. We're gonna map out a timeline with deliverables, and so if you haven't met these deliverables, we have these clawbacks, or we have these provisions that are going to entice you to stay on track and make sure things happen. So we retain some control over what happens on that property, even after the sale has been initiated. So it's got this timeline of that we can work through, until it closes. So I think, I think the other aspect, between these two is, on the one, for just sort of the immediate sale, you're getting some cash up front, as quickly as you can. If we are able to use this development solicitation process to facilitate, a development that happens, a larger development that happens sooner maybe than a land bank would create, you're creating ongoing tax revenue for the district, which then of course passes through to the city. In this situation, these properties are owned by the urban renewal district, so any money that the district gets is urban renewal district money. But given that the district owes the city a significant amount in loans, that money would then flow over to the city of Independence. So whether it was money up front, that could potentially flow, but then if we are able to create a development, that would then trigger, create annual property tax revenue that comes into the district and would be able to pop over to the city. Just, talking, kind of examples of numbers, if we were talking about a mixed use building, an $8 million mixed use building, which would be, I'd say roughly equivalent to like an Osprey Point type of a building, that would have about a $4 million assessed value, generates about $75,000 annually in property taxes. And around 52,000 of that would be captured by the urban renewal district, which would then be able to come over to the city. That would be, like I say, annually until the district expires, and then it would go back to the normal property tax distribution. We met with our broker team this afternoon for the first time, just to talk about properties, talk about all the different properties that we're looking at. We actually discussed these properties as well and kind of asked their opinion about what's the best way to approach, selling these. They looked, at the same image that I'm showing you all and said, well, those neighboring properties create a lot of opportunity, for something more, something that would create a greater benefit for the downtown realistically. You look at that, the middle property there, you can envision that whole corner being a unified development, with some type of a mix of commercial and then residential, housing. That creates a lot more of a benefit to the city, to the downtown, to the businesses, than just building some townhomes or some type of small apartments or other things on the property in and of itself. So they really felt like we'd be missing an opportunity if we didn't try to create some type of a leveraged development using our properties. The other great, good thing about it is we can still generate money from this sale. Like I say, we can sort of say we're advertising these properties for sale and our minimum price is this. And so, we can approach it that way. The only real, in my opinion, the only real downside is it'll take a little bit longer to put these properties on the market. It's easy to just say, hey, we're listing these properties, here's the price, away we go. To do a good development solicitation, you've got to do a lot of preliminary work with the developers. Probably do a few site tours, walking people around the downtown, talking about the opportunities, talking about the situation. Building a database of developers, that we would want to reach out to contact about this opportunity. And then, of course, doing the solicitation itself, the process, all of that. Our brokers can't help us with that. They've got experience with it. We've got experience with it. So it's not something that's really kind of, I'd say a challenge, but it takes time if you're going to do it right. So instead of getting the properties on the market, within a month or so, it would probably be kind of a spring, early summer time frame before we're able to get, the solicitation out there. But realistically, given that we're already looking to generate one-time money for the city with these other property sales, with the museum building, with, some of these park properties that we're going to be listing. We're looking at these urban renewal district properties and saying that, the downtown is really that, it's still that kind of the core value of the community. And we want to make sure we get that decision right. And just sort of putting the properties out there to say, here, anybody who can meet our price, you can do whatever you want, versus, keeping a little bit of control over what may or may not happen on the property. That's the approach that we're looking to take. But I think with that spiel, I'm happy to get a little bit of feedback from you all about, your thoughts on the different approaches and kind of how you see this playing out. Sorry, you're on me.
I have lots too.
Have we looked at making any of this area parking and like paid parking kind of thing? Because I know that for Independence Days we use some of that middle lot really for parking, but and with all of that housing and stuff there, maybe that's an option.
Yeah, I would say, so we have not looked at doing it as a city thing. We did actually talk to the folks at who own the Independence Landing Apartments, because, to see if they had an interest in doing it both for their folks and anybody else. They ran the numbers and said that the cost of construction to build a paved parking lot was gonna be too much to be able to recoup the paid parking.
Mr. Irvine, because not everybody speaks government, particularly for folks that are not present in the room. Can you just do a brief high-level overview of what an urban renewal district is?
Yes, sorry, yeah. So urban renewal district, the idea is you designate an area that has essentially blight or is economically distressed. And then you're creating I always struggle with trying to explain this in a non-confusing way, but essentially what happens is you take that area and you create a line on essentially the property tax revenues within that area at that time you create the district. And then what happens is any additional tax revenue that comes into that district beyond that point, whether it's a 3% annual increase in property values or assessed values, or if it's, for example, a new building that gets built within that district, the property tax revenue from those, that increase goes into an urban renewal fund. And that urban renewal fund has to be spent within the urban renewal district, creating economic opportunity or eliminating blight. So that's essentially in the city of Independence, the downtown, and a good chunk of our industrial area is inside the urban renewal district. And these properties that we're talking about, the larger Independence Landing property where the new apartments are, where the hotel is, that all used to be the Valley Concrete site. That was an urban renewal project where urban renewal district acquired the land and funded the infrastructure improvements that enabled those developments to happen. And then, as I said before, now that those developments have been stabilized, we have a few remnant properties that we're looking to do something with. Was that reasonably
I hope so, everybody. Counselor Court?
You mentioned that revenues, property tax revenues and whatnot could flow into the city. Is that because the urban renewal district owes the city money? So it would come back in to pay the city back?
I'm gonna ask Kenna to answer that, cause she knows the finance stuff better, but you'll say it better than I do.
So yes, when the properties sell, those funds will go, whether they sell just into whatever's gonna happen, or they sell on the development plan. Those funds will go into the URA, and the URA will then have, because you know the URA is cash poor. The URA will then have the funds to pay the city what we expected they would pay us. And then the tax revenues will also go into the URA, increasing the cash levels so that they can pay us back on the schedule that we had expected.
And what can we use that money for?
Once it's paid back, it goes into the general fund. Because the general fund is the original funding agency to the
Do you
URA.
have a sense of how much we're talking about?
If Robert here can tell you for sure, but I
How much
feel
does the URA owe the city? What's it? Ballpark, millions?
million,
Okay,
600,000. A significant sum.
okay,
And the reason I'm not sure is because it owes different places.
got it.
Counselor Ward?
Yes, I have the same question that Councilor Boisvert had about parking. There are two ways that I can see to look at this. One is to dedicate a certain amount of that space before the land is sold to say that's going to be taken up for parking based on increased residential or commercial activity in that area. I think we had a traffic, I know we had a traffic assessment and found that we actually had enough parking spaces to accommodate, although that's not true every day, but overall it's true. Also, a couple of other things. How are we going to create access from down below to up above beyond the one stairway that goes between the parking lot from Osprey Landing and up around behind Brew and to the sidewalk? There needs to be some other walkable aspect or walkable access from down below to up above. I don't know where that would come from, but I had another couple of questions about on tax lot number, I believe 200 and 300 are owned by the same person.
Yes,
Okay, how about 400 and 500?
no, at least according to the county, there are two different owners for those.
Okay, because that seems like that's prime undeveloped area also, especially since I believe this city was wise in building the city hall where it is now, because it will help draw the commercial district this direction, and that's already been happening. My main concerns were about parking. I know some other things here. We have organizations that park during the day, in the evening. I know there's some parking along the north portion of Dr. Winoker's property. I know they don't use all that parking during the day. That might be something we could coordinate with him for some additional public parking. The parking and the access to Main Street from down below are my two main issues.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, parking is definitely something that, I think can be.
Can be built into a development agreement.
Be figured out, I mean, and I know, I mean, just as an example, I know Corvallis, several years ago had a hotel that was looking at coming downtown. And it was gonna build a little parking garage for itself, and they worked out a deal where it was gonna include a certain number of public spaces within the parking lot for itself.
Right.
So I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you can talk about.
Yeah.
We'd have to really figure out, I'd hate to put too many sideboards on that, sort of at the beginning. Without knowing, kind of what's really feasible there.
I've always felt like there were commercial opportunities on the back sides of our Main Street businesses. And this would give more access to them and a reason to build out behind.
Counselor Redden?
I feel like you're comparing sometimes the finished project with us developing and providing conditions with empty lots. So if we did the option one and we list and sell. And people come in and develop their own properties and they do all the work that we would have you guys do. Would we still gain some sort of urban renewal tax off of that, even if they're developing their own
Yes,
area, or we don't get any?
yes, no, definitely, so if somebody, if we just listed the properties and somebody came in and paid us whatever the price was and came in and built 8 townhomes, whatever, you name it. Yes, we would, the urban renewal district would capture the increment from those properties.
I guess when I interpreted what you were saying is if we don't do option two, we don't get any of the benefits of option two. And so we still get the benefits of options one, we just don't have the workload that the city is required to front load this operation. We still have control and say on what's happening in the downtown if we do option one, because we still have the guidelines and restrictions we have in our community as is, we just don't have you and other city staff doing all this work to do the forward progress in it. So you said, if we do option two, it entices people to stay on track. What do you think entices them to work within the restrictions and burdens that the city places on them?
Well, I mean, as I said, that would be, with option two, we're creating a development agreement that says, here's what's gonna happen, here's the process, and it has checkpoints where it says, look, if it's been, say, a year, you don't even have, financing identified, there's potentially an option for the city to retain ownership of the properties and the deal goes away. Whereas if, under option one, if we sell the properties, if somebody's financing doesn't come through and it's not looking like it's gonna happen, they're gonna still have the property, it's just nothing's gonna happen on it.
And then I clarify too, as Sean noted, on option two, the realtor team will actually be doing most of the packaging. So it actually won't be any additional burden on staff. And our public works really prefers development agreements. So that's the preferred outcome.
How much does it cost us to develop these plans with these people to get to the front loading of this operation?
We don't know that yet. We haven't started talking with it.
I think it would be kind of interesting to know what the overall cost would be for developing option number two, then letting number one go through and we can still put restrictions on things and not be totally all hands in.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to let everyone know, I've just received a text from our IT director. We're having some issues with our agenda software, similar to what happened a few weeks ago. It's recording and streaming to our website, but it is not forwarding the video over to YouTube. So, just so you're aware, it is going to the website. It is not going to YouTube. Sorry to interrupt. I thought it was
But
important.
it'll post to YouTube later.
We'll-
Perfect.
As well, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
not streaming that right.
We'll post it. But
Streaming
it's
not right. One more question, we were hands-on with the Independence Landing piece, correct, on Osprey Lane?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's my concern too, is, we were hands-on there and kind of messed up that development too. I mean, a lot of people call it, our projects, we can't even park in the driveways there, there's lots of little things we could have done better there. So maybe if we had outside eyes looking into these 3 lots, maybe we would get a better property.
Was Osprey Point essentially an option two project?
So Osprey, yes, it was
Didn't we have
it was
some timelines that had to be met along the way?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there was sort of 2 different agreements. One was the hotel and apartments, and then a separate agreement was Osprey Point.
And as I understand it, the apartments are full and have been since early on in Osprey Point. But there's still an opening downstairs.
Yes.
Where's the Heritage Preservation Commission in all this?
So they would take their normal role. I actually think this is actually outside the historic district. It does, the whole Independence Landing area, which includes these 3 properties, does have its own design standards, its own architectural design standards that are intended to ensure that new construction reflects that historic character. But it's been a long time since I've looked, but I think that the HPC would not, weigh in on, new development the way they would with something inside the district.
But if we were looking with what Counselor Morgan said, if we did need to find another pathway up from the lots, there is a mural that I know that we all love, but it does offer an opportunity to maybe have a way up that way.
But the lot behind that would then have to be purchased to put.
Right, I was just saying that could be, there's a down there and it would.
The easiest access from low to high is through the mural.
Right.
But there's some ownership issues with, I believe the Elks owns at least part of that.
Yeah, they own that garden lot.
And if I can, just, that's an example where, and you're right that, in both of these scenarios, a good developer is gonna try to figure out their options before they go and make an offer. But, so that's a case where somebody, either the person who owns that lot or somebody else might say, hey, I can use this and I can use the city's piece over here and I can create something.
And the more they, focus on the needs of the entire community, the better opportunity there is for a lesser purchase price.
Depending on our desire.
Depends.
And I get, for clarity's sake, because I'm trying to really see the advantages of each option. We're all painfully aware of an unfinished building in town. Was that an option 1 or an option 2 project?
Honestly, that's a great question.
That was a private project from
Well,
beginning to end.
Yes,
But it was a publicly purchased and then sold project, and so, I honestly don't know if there was a development agreement for that or not, but that is an example of why we.
because I'm thinking that there was not.
And that's,
If memory serves me correctly in these days, I'm never quite
But
sure.
that building
And
should
that
be
is
condemned.
one of the reasons, Councilor Martinez, why we do look at a little bit more control, is we do know the community. They ask us about that every year.
Oh, I know.
And so having a bit more control on the option 2 does allow us to put, parameters around it. And we could even put in clawback where we do take the property back if they don't follow through and resell it. That one, as my understanding, because it was private, we didn't have that option.
yeah,
Right.
I believe it was transferred and it was done.
Yes.
Whereas, I mean, in the other ones, we don't transfer ownership until there's proof of financing, until proof of, plans and permitting, and, we try to create conditions to ensure that that everything is as lined up as it possibly can be before handing things over.
We don't know I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
we don't know the upfront cost for option 2. But if the URA is cash poor, where's that money gonna come from to pay for those upfront costs?
Well, we only don't know the cost to have the realtor do the job
work,
package.
right.
But the realtor listing it, they'll be on it. I wanna say contingency, because that's the legal term.
Commission basis.
Commission, thank you. That's the law one. They will be on the commission. We're talking with them now about, what that would cost. Perhaps that would be a part of their commission because they know.
Yeah, I would hope that so. I would
Right.
hope so, yeah.
And that's what we would try to negotiate.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Or at least I would try to negotiate.
That was basically my question too. It's just, we really can't weigh both options if we have no idea what the costs are gonna be with either one. I mean, technically, if the market's right, option 1 could do its job and supply money to the urban renewal and pay us back what we need and save us money and upfront costs. But if options aren't looking good, then maybe it is best for us to do option 2, pay those upfront costs and do that development. I'm just concerned with the city's past record of developments of rushing into option 2 without knowing all the data. How much is it gonna cost? What are the benefits gonna be? And so without that information, I feel like.
I agree with that, and I think it's good that we've already gotten a Realtor team involved and, that we, respect their wisdom in this case.
Their wisdom was to move forward with option 2.
And if I can, just to be clear, in terms of upfront costs, we're not talking about building infrastructure or making significant investments that way. It's really just kind of limited to the brokers, and staff time. But your point is taken.
And we did ask that question, because they are the experts, they do have expertise in, well, all types of sales, including this type. And I directly asked that, when you look at this, what would you recommend? And the most senior member who has done this for, well, he was doing this when I was with the city of Salem, so I'm not aging myself, but it's been a year or two. That was right out of the blocks. What he is that taking this forward as a package, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong because I didn't write down his words, but taking this forward as a package would be the best opportunity for the city for the future. And we would be missing an opportunity if we tried to sell it just on a piece by piece basis.
I
Did I
think
get that
lawyers-
about right?
I think lawyer talk would follow this hearsay. And I think it would be great to
Good
have.
thing we're not before it.
So it would be great to have these people here so we can ask them directly what the perspectives are and give us the opportunity to question. Or we can-
I'm torn because I'd like to see money come into the city really fast. At the same time, I like the idea of having a clawback. But that also, there's the potential of us clawing back and this going on and on and on. I'm concerned about the way it looks. I'm concerned about us having some input into how it looks and how it's structured and everything, and speaking to the parking and the access as well. But I'm honestly kind of torn between the two. I see the logic of option 2. I'm not as concerned about the upfront costs maybe as others, but,
What
Yeah, we need money.
information can we bring you back, counselor, that you need to help balance this? Any counselor, just Counselor Core asked the question.
Okay, and I'm aware that this question is not really in your specific ballpark. The zoning requirements, what is that? This portion zoned? Is that an MX zone?
No, it's actually zoned to the downtown riverfront zone, which is it's a special zone that we created just for that Independence Landing property. What it allows for is essentially a mix of commercial and higher density residential uses. So, for example, our commercial zone, you can only have residential as an upper floor above a ground floor commercial use. In the downtown riverfront zone, you could have, for example, an apartment building next to a commercial building. So you could have just a purely residential building, in this zone, whereas you would not normally be able to within our commercial zone.
And an apartment in that area, a big apartment would be difficult if they have to provide parking for every unit.
Yeah, and that's, as with any development, that's kind of the push
Yeah.
pull is like what you're technically allowed to do versus what you can feasibly be able to do.
And I guess that was gonna be my follow-up question. I'm sorry, was there somebody? Okay, I'm looking and my peripheral doesn't go quite that far. Within that zoning, were they to do residential, there are not parking requirements, allocation requirements?
I would have to go back and look to see exactly what those
There-
are. I would think.
And I know it's not your wheelhouse
Yeah.
specifically. but-
I believe there would be parking requirements. I just don't know.
It doesn't have to be in a garage, it has to be prepared on the site.
It would have to be somewhere.
Yeah, and not the street.
Right.
Yeah,
Cause I think it's like one per unit or something, cause that's one of the issues with the apartments, as a lot of them have 2 cars.
Yeah,
But they're stacked back to front.
Yeah.
The other thing to remember too is we have 3 other properties, 4 other properties. That they're
3 plus the museum.
3 plus the museum that they're gonna be marketing. So, and they were quite excited by a couple of those properties. So if this one, if it's the money coming in right now, there's the very good possibility that the other properties will sell before this one. right? And so we will have money coming in.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not like this is it. Just want to clarify that this is not the only property that's listed.
I'll be honest, one of my biggest concerns here is who's gonna be the developer. I think you know who I'm thinking about.
Well, and that's why we have
Yeah.
we would have the process where they would come to us and we would be able to evaluate it and have that control. Because if you get a developer who, you know, has a history of not developing and just like Sean said, land banking it, if we just sell it, this could sit here forever.
Being able to say no to developer helps me with option two.
Because we look at the whole package. And based upon the parameters that we've put in, and when I say we, it's the council, we'll go to the council, you'll make this determination.
Yeah,
That the city puts in, that, you know, we would like a request for a development option for these properties that includes, you know, parking or, you know, building within a certain time frame, or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Main Street access.
Whatever it
Yeah.
is,
I
right?
mean, it's important that the developers' eyes are not bigger than their stomach. You know, that
Mhm.
they've got a track record of doing this kind of work, successful track record of doing this kind of work. So if we're able to have that kind of oversight, I'm happy with that.
And I think we're fortunate with the realtors that we chose. They do have a lot of experience with contractors, and they were able to actually comment on a couple of contractors who are very, very good.
Can you say who the realtor is?
That's
Yes.
Coldwell Banker.
Okay.
So it's actually a team. It's Alex Roden, Kelsey Sands, Jeff Miller, and shoot, Dennis. I'm forgetting his last name.
Yeah, and City Manager West, what? I'm trying to get that big picture grasp on this, so we got some developers and one has a plan for, I'm assuming that we can potentially see 3 plans.
One plan with all three or 3 plans.
Okay, so that was, yeah, question 1, and then. What does that overall process then look like? So developers, A and B or A or whatever, come and they hand y'all their proposed plans. Then what happens?
So think of it like you would for bidding out an infrastructure project, right? Or when Sean put out the RFP for this, right? This is what we want. We want this, we want it to look like this, and we want these things. And the developer comes in and says, hey, I can pay you this much and give you these things and this, plus this. Or I can give you this thing, but not this, and I'm only gonna pay you that. And we basically take them all, just like an infrastructure bid, and we have a checklist and we go through and we say, okay, developer A, ding, 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 developer B, boom, boom, oh, not here, developer C, right? And so we check all those boxes based upon a weighting. So we know what's gonna be important to you, because by the time we get to that, we'll know what you guys tell us.
Right, and so, okay, I was unclear in what I'm really looking for. So at that point, do those then go to our planning commission? Do they come to us? That's what I'm
Gotcha.
kind of, is the opportunities for input, whether it's with our planning commission or the public.
We've done it a number of different ways, and usually depending on sort of the size and scale of the project. Old City Hall was just handled at a staff level, although the end, sort of discussion, staff kind of identified the preferred purchaser, but then had conversations with council and executive session about sort of the why and the how, and coming to agreement on the deal before going into open session to actually conduct the property transaction. In Independence Landing, if I remember it, we had a small committee of, I think, maybe one counselor and a couple of staff that reviewed the proposals. We actually did interviews in that case, and did it that way. We'd have to figure that out.
Big options.
Okay, So you're asking what we might want. I'd like, I guess, some clarity of process.
Yeah, so it sounds like you would like a more solid idea of what option two would look like. And ideally a ballpark of what it would cost.
And some of that will end up being based on who you have as people who offer to get involved in this. And what their needs and designs and budget is.
But we'll have to know if we can go option two before we even get there, counselor. So that's the cart we
Right,
have to come behind the horse.
but you're gonna have. Even with just saying option two, you'll have developers with different depths of pockets. And some of that will affect what they're capable of doing.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see this development being looked at, because like I said, I think we've left a great commercial option on the shelf so far, and this needs to be activated.
Any other information that you want to share with us?
So I have three, no, Sean?
No, I think that, yeah, we've covered everything I wanted to cover, and I appreciate the discussions. It's helpful to kind of know where your touch points are.
So I've got clarity of process, a little bit more in depth on what option two would look like. And then a little bit more information on what that might cost. Now, we'll try and move this along as quickly as we can. And do you want us to bring this back to you in another work session? Or do you want us to bring it back to you at council?
Council. I think that would accelerate the
Yeah.
timeline perhaps a little bit.
Great, yeah. And I say council, but I mean,
I was gonna
the
say.
URA meeting.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
sorry about that.
Yes, in advance of or after, like,
Yes.
council meeting, yes.
Yes, okay. So we will get this pulled together as quickly as we
And
can.
we should be able to do that reasonably quickly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, beginning of October would probably be a good target. But yeah, beginning of October.
All right, so we will try to bring this back to you at a URA meeting, the beginning of October. If we're all, you just keep being really get it done, it might be the end of September, but it's just a few weeks away. Thank you for all of the input as we're trying to, we've already do this. And I think we're very optimistic about the team we have on board.
Yeah, I was pleased, very pleased.
And they're definitely looking forward to it.
So last chance before we call adjournment. Okay, I hear nothing, so
Move to adjourn.
let's do it.
Thank you.